Welcome. This is going to be today's show. California liberals and USA conservatives react to Trump sending in the Marines. Additionally, not in the title, we'll be talking about a retrospective. How did Californians feel last time Trump was here? What were the reactions? And is there any similarity between what's going on now and what happened in 2016? It's 2025. What was the similarities between how people reacted now and the way that they felt in 2016, almost a decade ago? We're going to literally show you what people are saying now, what people are saying then, what people on the left are saying, what people on the right are saying, what people are saying in a jingoistic tone, and what people are saying in real hard level policy battles. Well, let's get right into it. Donald Trump recently decided to federalize the National Guard and send it in to quell domestic protest, which is very rare. That was against the will of the California government, the California governor, and the entire population here. Not what anybody here wanted. He did it against our wishes. Additionally, that wasn't good enough. He sent in combat-trained Marines from 29 Palms who were, quote, angry. They were described as angry combat-trained Marines in on a domestic population, also not typically seen. Additionally, he said he would arrest the governor and his goons, also threw a sitting senator to the ground. One of the first Latinos to ever be in the Senate, treated like dog garbage. So in reaction to all of that, we have a couple things. Let's show you what the conservatives are saying, and then I'll show you what the liberals are saying. You're going to love both. First, here is Scott Jennings. Scott Jennings is a conservative. He's on CNN. And in reaction to California not liking what Trump is doing, hey, why are you sending Marines in? Why are you arresting people? Why are you throwing senators to the ground? Why are you sending combat-trained troops on a domestic population not seen since the 1950s, basically? And even then, it wasn't for a cause like this. And he says, well, California's a failed state, so you got to get in there and clean it up. There's the article where he said it. Scott Jennings calls California a failed state, etc. He's not alone. Recently, there was a show with Tucker Carlson. There's the name of the show they're using. Iran to distract you from something much bigger on the Tucker Carlson network. At 19 seconds in, he says, I want to ask you about California. It does seem like resisting federal authority on immigration is an act of sedition more profound than anything they did in Fort Sumter in 1861. He said that just a few days ago, talking about California and its reaction to Trump's actions. For a little bit of context, Fort Sumter was the start of the Civil War. This is an artist's rendition, so that is a federal installation, and those are rocket shells and cannonball shells, probably just cannons, from the Confederacy at a federal installation. So the Confederacy shot artillery to explode bodies and blow up the building, and gunfire to kill people on sight. That's what started the Civil War. Tucker Carlson is now saying that what we're doing in California is equivalent to attacking a federal installation with artillery fire and attempting to shoot federal military agents dead on sight. That's what he says. Said it a few days ago. Not to be undone, he was doing the interview with Steve Bannon. He goes, yeah, you're right. I thought we settled this about federal law and states' rights and secession in 1860. So because California is not backing down to Trump's excessive measures, California is essentially committing secession, and it's equivalent to what the Confederacy did. And Bannon completely agrees with him. They also talk about how California is falling apart, like Scott Jennings, and you can get the idea. Now, in return, we have some California liberals who have been saying some things like let me turn off the banner so you can see. This is the ICE raids in LA. California Democratic lawmakers speak out about National Guard deployment. And you can see at 8:22, one of the speakers in the California Assembly is saying, aligning with the other speakers, they're not like us, and California is better than them. That was only last week. What does she mean? Well, here's another speaker. McKenna is very high up in California government. And she said, this federal government, they're not like us. She said that at 2 minutes and 38 seconds in. She was backed up by this California legislator who said, yeah, the federal government, they're not like us, and California's better than them. So pretty strong language. On the one hand, you have conservatives saying that because California is not backing down after having its top officials elected with being arrested, other officials thrown to the ground, the Marines sent in and the National Guard sent in against the will of the people. The conservatives are saying, great. And California resisting to that is akin to what the South did in the Civil War. That's what they're saying. And California is completely a failed nation, so you got to be really rough with it. In response, California legislators who are from here and are liberal are saying, this federal government is not like us. We don't recognize this. It doesn't even look like the America that we know. Now, that may seem strong, except that we should consider this. In 2016, the California legislature said the exact same thing. So these people are saying this federal government's not like us in 2025. Here you go. And by the way, all of these other California Assembly politicians right there, nobody balked at it. Nobody scoffed. Nobody argued. They all just were like, yep. So that's a good chunk of the Assembly saying, yeah, we're cool with people saying America and this federal government's not like us. But they're not alone. This is 2025. In 2016, California's government also said the same thing. The top state senator, the top assembly person in the California government got together and released a joint statement. Today, we woke up feeling like strangers in a foreign land. When you're referring to fellow Americans as a foreign land, and you're saying, I feel strange compared to these other Americans, that's another way of saying they're not like us. They're not like us to the point of being foreign. So we said it in 2016, multiple assembly and senator members. And then we basically said another version of it again in 2025, multiple California politicians saying that. It should also be noted that there's some intelligent voices who have stepped into the fray. The Atlantic magazine, neither liberal nor conservative, has too given their opinion on Trump's actions. And what they're saying is, well, if California is not getting disaster aid, but is getting hostile deployment of federal troops, Californians might find it harder to see what's in it for them. No wonder one poll commissioned by an advocacy group earlier this year found that 61% of the state's residents thought California would be better off independent. So this is the Atlantic magazine. There's the article. And what they're saying is, given the way that Trump reacted to California, and given that California is a donor state, why would anyone put up with this? It's hard for Californians to see what's in it for them, meaning what's in it for them to stay in America. So here is the Atlantic magazine actually suggesting that thinking about secession is now reasonable. If you're not familiar, let's point out a little bit. The Atlantic magazine is a prominent magazine in Washington, D.C. Covers public policy. It's recognized for its in-depth reporting and analysis. The magazine also covers politics, etc. It's known for its in-depth analysis and is targeted towards serious national readers and thought leaders. So this is the magazine that they read in Washington, D.C. So if you're a politician and you're in the government and you're at the government level and you study policy and how the things work, the Atlantic magazine is the most serious policy magazine in America by far, period. Been that way for decades. I have to point that out because they're now saying in 2025, it's reasonable for Californians, given Trump's actions, to look into secession. Yes. Top policy magazine in D.C., most read amongst politicians, most respected for its in-depth coverage of politics, is saying, yeah, it's kind of reasonable now. Oops. There you go, this one. Now, this is not to be undone. Just like how we were showing how the California legislature in 2016 also said, feels like it's a foreign country like we did in 2025, so too has California a history with policy recommendations supporting secession. Here's one. This is in 2020. I know that's not 2016, but it's about 5 years ago. It's in the past. Cal Matters is the top policy magazine in California. And Dan Walters said, it raises, not for the first time, the question of whether California could or even should go it alone, evolving from a nation state into an independent nation, or more accurately, returning to his brief pre-statehood. So who's Dan Walters? Dan Walters is the longest running policy journalist in California, period. He's been doing it for about 60 years, about 50 years there. He covers the Capitol. There is no one who's more famous covering California politics or California policy, or seen as a more serious thinker about California government or policy than Dan Walters. He's also very conservative. The guy's really conservative, and he's not quick to rash judgments. But 5 years ago, he said maybe California should think about becoming independent. So the top policy scholar in 2020, 5 years ago, said California should be thinking about being independent. Now, the top policy magazine in all of America is saying the same thing. So I hope you see what's going on. In 2016, the California government, the elected officials, literally referred to America as a foreign land. 2025, multiple officials, flanked by even more elected heads, said this country's not like us. This exact same sentiment about close to 10 years later. Additionally, last time in 2020, we could only get top policy scholars in California to say maybe it's reasonable for California to pursue secession. Now in 2025, we have the top policy scholar in all of America saying that. So the sentiment of Californians is the same that it was a decade ago. And now the reasonable voices saying it's reasonable to look into secession have grown from California only to the entire federal apparatus and the entire American government. So we're getting more respectability for this concept. And the way California is acting has told conservatives that we are a failed state who's already pursuing secession, just like the South did. So I like to avoid jingoistic terms, but these are all facts. People said these things, they're saying they feel these things, and this is going on right now. The attitude that America is not California, just as strong as a decade ago. And now the opinion that California should pursue secession and that it's reasonable to look into that has grown even more popular. And yet the attitude that California is not under control, can't be controlled like the rest of America, is wildly out of line with America, and is basically ripping apart the country, is the most popular it's ever been with conservatives, the exact people who we need to let us go. If Tucker Carlson's right and Steve Bannon's right that California is causing such chaos in America, it threatens the unity of the nation. Well, guys, if you're unable to crush us, or I think break was the word that you used, and California is still resisting, then that must mean the downfall of America, right? If you're saying California acting this way could cause the breakup of America, if you can't control America, if you can't control California and beat it into submission, then that means California staying part of America will lead to the dissolution of America. So I want to say, conservatives, this is the reason why you should let California go. You're not going to break this place. You're not going to bring it to its knees. They will never bow to you. And so by your own logic, California is ripping apart America. Therefore, you should let California go for the good of the country in order to save the United States of America that you love so much. Things to think about based upon all facts. We'll be back more as soon as we have more hardcore factual-based information to give you. See you soon.